Hi, everybody. It's a good thing I don't have to compete with lunchtime conversation. But now we have a more intimate discussion, which is fine. So I'm happy to be up here, and I appreciate all of your taking the time out of lunch to have a little chat. And let me first start by providing you with the context of why, I'm feeling very good right now. Actually, 2 months ago, I had never been to Iceland. But I decided I wanted to go to Iceland because I know, like everyone else, that Iceland is dope. No matter what you do, where you are in the world, if someone says Iceland, you think it's got to be cool. Volcanoes, snow, everything is good, right? So I came to Iceland, and I met a woman named Ellen Ross Lindahl, who directs creative industries at the Confederation of Icelandic Industries. And net, she reached out a month later and said, come to Slush Play. And if you're going to speak about human capital, perhaps you can also introduce some of your friends who are entrepreneurs and investors to come and join us in the slush so we can play. And so, very fortunately, we have about a half a dozen investors and entrepreneurs who joined us and have enriched our time. And I'm very grateful both to them getting invited and for them bringing their time. And so, while we're here, as I talk to you about human capital, and I think about VR and AR, through the course of these few minutes, just think about the parallels of what's going on in Iceland itself and how the challenges and opportunities of VR and AR have relevance to Iceland because here we are in Iceland. So let's see if I can make this work. When I think about the essence of where we are with virtual reality and augmented reality, it's about game changing. The game is changing in many ways in how we think about how we work, how we play, how we learn, how we relate with each other. And so, at a high level, what is changing after we get through the desert and we get consumer adoption? VR and AR adds a whole new dimension to the human experience. It gives us tools that we never had before. We're working through those tools now. Headsets, controllers. Do we use our brain, our eyes, our hands? What kind of sensors to help us navigate in these constructs of these new worlds that we now have at our disposal? Oh, and by the way, we need new content to play with because we're in a desert of content, just like we're building the Mars lander at the same time. So that will give us a whole new language that we've got to work with. And that represents challenges, and it represents opportunities. Likewise, we suddenly release the physical and emotional constraints on our engagement with each other, with the world, with ourselves. We can now go from being inside of our brain or inside of our heart. I think I've got a little bit of mix going on. Or we can go to the end of the universe, and we can go back and forth and click between the two of them. We're released from our physical constraints, and we're also released from our emotional restraints, where we don't necessarily have to engage with anybody directly if we don't want to, which has been happening with mobility. Or we can engage in ways that we never thought possible. So as we get into VR, if we think about VR-based voyeurism, imagine where it will be 5 years from now. I think we're still getting some clicks on the mic. Okay. Well, I'll just try not to move. See if that works. And it also gives us a change. I might even take this off a minute. It might give us a change in, what do you think? Should we just cut it? So in any event, we have difference, we're changing the game in a variety of ways. And so let's think about how we change the game throughout human history. Energy. We used to live in caves and we used to be cold. All of a sudden, probably by accident, someday, one day, 500,000 years ago, somebody happened upon fire. And everything was cool once you could sit around the fire and you can cook things. And if you think about that all the way until now, we've got a global energy system. We use the sun, and we can use all kinds of manifestations of power to drive the way we live and to take us to Mars and beyond. In the process of going from the fire in the cave to the global energy system, there's been a great deal of disruption, and every time there's disruption, there's winners and losers. There's challenges and opportunities because it brings on new dimensions. Agriculture. You know, in the very beginning, somebody came up with the great idea of cooking grain instead of just chasing animals and killing them after we had fire. And that enabled social organization to change dramatically. Fast forward to today, you know, half of the world's grain exports comes from industrialized corn and things like that, and wheat from the US and other massively industrial farms, all of which create its own challenges and opportunities for all the players all along the way. Those who don't adopt, those who don't create their own language, cease to be effective. And those who do go on and scale, and they're the winners. Printing. It wasn't that long ago, maybe 4,000 years ago, that the Chinese came up with the idea of writing shit down on tortoise shells, right? That was cool. And then the Egyptians did it with papyrus, and now we're printing ears and hearts and everything we can imagine. And let's not talk to the NRA, because we bet people are going to be printing guns, and they're probably doing that right now. Right. So industrialization, it was only in the early 20th century that Ford came up with the idea of the line. And now we've got the Tesla factory. And now we have nanomachines. So all along the way, there's been a great deal of disruption. And it wasn't that long before Genghis Khan crossed the European continent to beat the Russians and the Poles with, you know, groups of horses through transportation. And now we're worrying about how do we operate in a world where Uber just went from, don't worry, you won't see autonomous vehicles for another 25 years to, oh, by the way, it's live in the US today. Things are moving quickly. Lots of disruption happens. We've gone from drumming, the earliest form of group distributed communication, to interstellar communications. And how many of you in the room remember CompuServe in the user groups? Some of the older ones of us do, right? And today, I have a 23 and a 20-year-old child, and can you imagine being not connected all the time anywhere? And incidentally, how many of you sleep with your phones by your bed? And how many of you look at your phone when you wake up in the middle of the night to see if something came in or some messages or anything like that? Those who don't, that means you're being Icelandic and being very balanced. I work with that struggle myself. So what do new realities disrupt? Talent and skills, incentives, narratives, in organizations. Anytime, whether you're going from fire to farming to printing to industrialization, it's always the same thing. All of these things disrupt. So what's the big deal about disrupting talent and skills as it relates to VR and AR? Design, engineering, production skills, all kinds of product and creation skills that are going along with all the technologies that are now available to us. Everything's new. And by the way, on content, everything's new. And that means we need people with new skills for new models and new technologies and new business models, as well as the funding and marketing challenges of the fact that we're going through the desert pre-market adoption. We have to have survival skills. So that means that somehow all the players in VR and AR need to navigate a whole new game. So for those who can do so and think in a manner of transforming themselves and uplifting, then they're going to have the opportunity to create and grow foundational talent in teams, and they're going to be in the ground floor of hot new industries, and they get to be the Steve Jobs of this year in those guys. Think about CCP, where it was when it began, and the guys who were in CCP, and the ladies, then and where they are today. It was a founding generation of talent and skills that managed to transform themselves and give them the foundation for success in the future. Well, so while you're worrying about changing, adapting, attracting, and retaining the skills and talent, you have to think about how you incentivize them. Because any time you've got something new, there's going to be a constrained pool of people who can do it. Therefore, if there's a lot of demand for a few people, there's going to be a war on talent, which means you have to find ways to incentivize people. And you're going to be in a place where there's lack of skills and experiences, which you have to compensate by drawing people in and maintain them, which can be difficult when you're having trouble with funding and you're having trouble with your business model. Because they're saying, why should I gamble my career on your company? And so the other hand of it is that for those of you who are looking at playing in the world of VR and AR, which means all of you who are here, you know that there is a lot of opportunity that's coming. It's only, is it now or 3 years or 5 years? And you know that big bets have been taken. Magic Leap, Next VR, and Oculus. You've seen at least 1 or 2 exits like Oculus. And you know that the winning teams are going to be going, so the gamblers and the risk takers, the adventurers, the thrill seekers who make it, are going to have all those skills and experiences to be the founding fathers and mothers of the next generation. Well, by the way, if you think about VR and AR and the transformation that it's giving us, it also is going to turn our organizations upside down. Suddenly, imagine a boardroom where you've got 7 people tuning in to a very nice board, interacting with each other, and they're all over the world. So you can be at your home office and you can be right in the boardroom, interactive, high framework resolution, very good. On the other hand, there's a company right here that I was sitting in their offices the other day where we've got a workspace where I can have all of my apps open while having a beautiful background, which I have my choice of. What part of the world, what cool place am I in? What music do I listen to? As I work my apps, sitting right here at my seat, and if there's 10 seats, all 10 of us working on this have zero connection to one another. So I suggested, why not go talk to WeWork, the workspace guys, and say, good, you can just rent this, and you can get that, and you've got your world to yourself, but organizationally, you can have 30,000 people sitting in offices right next to each other, and they have zero connection to each other, conceptually. That's going to create challenges in the social organization. It's just something that is new because we have new norms evolving of etiquette around VR and AR that's not yet settled, just like with phones, right? How many times do we have to tell people at the movie theater, like, turn that shit off so we can enjoy the theater? Well, nobody is thinking about that in terms of what are the new norms and etiquettes in communities around VR and AR when I'm walking around with my headset on. But no worries, because 5 years from now, they're going to be like Oakley glasses. And maybe they're Oakley glasses and I can see so I can navigate. But where do you draw the line in keeping the connections good, in keeping people feeling good while you're expanding your own space? And I'm in Hawaii when I'm here in Reykjavik because I'm enabled to do so now. The opportunity with disrupting organization is you're getting onto the mega trends in work and play. And as a company, if you are think about Steelcase, the big furniture supplier. They're always having to be at the edge of what's cool and what's comfortable and what's effective in how we work. If you have VR and AR embedded into how you do it, you're telecommunicating and you're co-locating and you've got your own desk where you can go wherever you want, you can attract people by saying, come work here because it's cool. You want to do childcare? Be at home and just plug in with your headset and we have our meetings. All that stuff can happen. You can use that as an opportunity and a benefit and a hook to attract and retain and incentivize your talent. So I'm going to be closing out shortly because I've run myself out of time, but I'm going to leave you with a couple of thoughts. Number one, all of this change in capability and content is about disrupting narratives. How we think about ourselves, how we think about our relationships, how we think about our work, how we think about achievement and self-fulfillment. There are challenges and there are opportunities in terms of staying in front of the game. And so the final thought is all of this is confronting all of you as AR and VR investors and entrepreneurs. Iceland, we're here, and I'm almost done. Remember, my thing stopped for a minute. Iceland is a place that can reflect on Singapore, which was once a marsh with nothing, and is today a global powerhouse, all based on human capital, all based on social organization, all based on changing mental models around what we can do and where we can go. And my gamble and my bet is that Iceland can and will do all of that where it leverages global networks and it leverages its ability and unique place in the world and creates momentum and incentives, which is part of what we're doing here, to create an amazing environment for companies and talent and make it a hub for innovation and lifestyle and fulfillment in VR and AR and beyond. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to have had a few minutes to talk with you. If you ever have any questions, you can find me. I'm reasonably easy to spot. And I'll be around here for the next day or so. before I disappear into the wilderness to find something else cool in Iceland to see. And thank you very much. All right.